Hey guys, it's Busta here. So this is just a little reminder to anyone who may not know that you can now find exclusive horror story videos on Twitch, where I also live stream Monday to Friday each day. If you would like to join in on the live streaming action, or just wish to listen to more stories, just hit the link in the description below and follow me on Twitch. Also, due to the adpocalypse, this channel is now moving towards becoming independently funded by viewers. So if you would like to watch all of the videos that I create in MP3 format, or would like to just simply support me to continue to do what I'm doing here for as little as $1 a month, please click on the link in the description below and become a patron today. Also, thank you to everyone who has been supporting me, whether it's here on YouTube, on Twitch, or through Patreon. I hope you all enjoy this week's videos, and without further ado, let's begin. I still remember vividly the day that I almost got abducted. I was 12 years old and lived in an isolated seaside city surrounded by the boreal forest. The closest big town was a 2-hour car drive, and, as any lonely place is, the area I grew up in was extremely depraved. Half mining town, half Indian reservation, people there were, and still are, extremely prone to violence, stealing, and drug and alcohol abuse. From my first year up until 4th grade, I went to a nearby school that was 2 small streets, or about 200 meters away from my home. But this school didn't have a 5th grade, so I ended up using the bus for the first time the year this happened. At 6 a.m, I would walk out of my front door and a few streets away until I got into a long street with several intersections. Every morning, our bus would pick up 3 students to a stop that was perhaps 100 meters ahead, turn at an intersection to pick up other students, come back and take us in. We, me and my 2 stopmates, always thought it was kind of stupid to put 2 stops in a single street, and when we felt like sitting down early, we'd walk the extra distance to get in before the intersection. One morning, I got out early as I had noticed a heavy snowstorm and thought that the wind would slow me down in my walk towards the stop. I was shivering all the way there, and I looked right at the other stop. There was no one there. I thought a few students might have not shown up because of the temperature, while others were probably still watching the news to check if today would be a snow day. I remember touching my face and feeling spots of hardened, cold skin around my cheeks. Small frostbites are a common occurrence in this kind of climate, but I immediately walked up to the pre-intersection stop so my cheeks wouldn't get any worse. These always hurt like hell when they warmed up, so I wanted to get done with it as soon as I could. For a few minutes, there was nothing but me, the raging wind, and the sting of the snowflakes hitting my face. Then, I saw an old grey car turn over the corner and roll at an astoundingly slow pace in my direction. My heart began to pound faster as I noticed the dirty-looking native that was staring at me from the driver's seat. He passed by me and pulled over in the bike lane. I stared at him from the other side of the street, wondering what the hell this man was doing this early, obstructing the bike lane in the middle of a snowstorm. I had slight vision problems, but hadn't been diagnosed, so I squinted as hard as I could to try and see what was going on inside of the car. And that's when I realized that he was holding something vertically in his left hand, and that said thing was pointing right at me. It was a camera. I started to panic as my muscles literally froze in place, paralyzed by fear. Why the hell was this man taking a picture of me? The thing that struck me the most was the weird way he held his camera, using only one hand and holding it sideways. I began to breathe more and more heavily as I realized I was too far from my house to run up there, and that most people were likely asleep with their doors locked. I was stuck, and if he decided to attack me for some reason, there was no way that I could escape. Run, I thought, as the car slowly began to move again and turned over to the side of the road I was standing on. But I was so shocked, so panicked that my body simply refused to obey me. He drove in this disturbing, painfully slow way as he got closer and closer to me. I nearly lost consciousness as he reached my stop. I felt his car begin to slow down even more when I suddenly heard a loud humming sound coming from further up the street. Another car suddenly pierced through the veil of the snow, making the native man jam his foot on the gas pedal and take off at maximum speed. One of my 2 stopmates arrived a few seconds after, and I finally gathered the courage to run towards her. The thing that makes this story particularly creepy is not all of this stuff, but the fact that 2 years later, the corpse of an abducted 5-year-old was found in the nearby woods. I'll never know for sure if this story is related to mine, but I shiver every time I think that I might have been staring at a murderer right in the eyes. I later called the cops, described the events, and got a promise that they would patrol the area more often. But I never saw a police car in the surrounding in the 5 following years. As for the picture, well, I'll never know if it's been deleted, if it's hanging in some psycho's private collection, or if it's out there in some twisted site for all to see. Thinking back on it all, if it wasn't for this exact set of circumstances, I might have been caught in God knows what awful situation. So, if you happen to accidentally stumble upon a strange website and see a picture of a chubby little girl with a bright pink hat and frostbitten cheeks standing amidst a snowstorm, you might just know the story behind it. I hitchhiked alone for 3 weeks in the Balkans this summer. Being a girl alone can be risky, but the drivers I encountered were super nice, and some of them even bought me food and water. Everyone was concerned about my safety, but I was just fearless and confident. This incident happened the last days of my trip. Before I start my story, I feel the need to defend hitchhiking. It is not as dangerous as people think. I got 22 rides in total during my trip, and only 1 went wrong. I don't mean to discourage anybody, especially girls from hitchhiking, because it is an amazing experience. I, myself, should have been more careful anyway. I kind of feel bad for providing people with another hitchhiking gone wrong story, while there are so many beautiful ones. I plan on writing everything in a blog, so if you're interested, I can post it in the comments when finished. So, I had already hitchhiked successfully through 5 countries. But I had a bad feeling this morning while walking to a gas station outside of a little town. I started asking couples and families if they'd go my direction, but I was unlucky. So I decided to raise my thumb like I usually did the last weeks. Immediately, a guy stops and asks for sex. I refuse, but he stays 5 minutes trying to convince me. The minute he leaves, another car stops with 2 guys inside. They don't ask for sex, but they look at me in the worst way possible, so I refuse the ride. After another minute, a red van stops. The guy is young and good-looking, with a nice smile. He looks trustworthy enough, so I jump in the van. The first 30 minutes, we make some small talk and things are looking good. But then, he starts talking about sex. What is wrong with men in this place? Well, I ask him to stop because I feel uncomfortable. He calls me a cold woman and says that I should relax. He starts talking about how hot I am and that his dick is going to explode. I ask him again in my most serious way to stop talking about his dick. I explain to him that I am not a prostitute and I am not exchanging rides for sex. So if this is not okay, he can leave me here. He looks serious this time, and he says that he'll take me to my destination. And an awkward silence for 10 minutes ensues. Then, all of a sudden he says,
"Say something. I picked you up to entertain me."
I am thinking that this ride is not good at all. We stop in a place to eat soon after, and I am seriously considering staying here and getting another ride. But I look around, and the place is full of men, not even one woman, and all of them look at me and give me these dirty looks. So, I decide to stay with my driver, and he looks more serious now. Maybe he'll be okay. We get back in the car, and after 5 minutes of driving, he tries to convince me to go to his eco village, only 5 kilometers from here. I refuse multiple times, but he makes the turn anyway. At this point, I am really angry and scared. We take a small mountain road, and there are indeed signs for this eco village. So, I'm thinking that I can get another ride from there. We finally arrive at this eco village, but he doesn't stop. He keeps driving. Well, that is the limit for me. I grab my backpack and I open the door. I jump out of the van and he just keeps driving. But I know that he's about to make a turn and come back, so I have to find a safe place. There was this woman working on a field nearby, so I go and stand in front of her. And he appears again, driving to the highway we were at before. He stops the car for a few seconds, and then he just keeps going. I realize that I am still in danger, but at least I'm out of this pervert's car. I start walking. My hands were shaking at this point. I arrive in this eco village, and I'm thinking that these people can help me. Maybe even give me a lift to the highway, because this guy could be waiting for me anywhere, and the road is mostly empty. I enter the eco village, and I go directly to the toilet. Before I enter, a woman stops me and she politely asks me if I've paid for entrance. I tell her that I really need to use the toilet first. In fact, I was almost crying at this point. Well, she agrees and I enter the toilet and I start crying in shock. I try to relax, but it was really hard. I go out of the toilet and this woman is waiting for me. I try to explain to her what happened, but I start crying again. She looks at me, concerned. She brings me to her boss. It's a 50-year-old woman that looked to me like a mother figure. I try to explain to her what happened while crying. She also looks concerned. She invites me in her bungalow and then takes me out the back door. And at this moment, she tells me something like, "Call the police, darling. You're not welcome here," before she slams the door in my face. I can't believe what just happened to me, and I want to shout to her that tomorrow it could be her or her daughter in my place. That she is a horrible person, and that if this guy is waiting for me, she will be responsible for any rape. But instead, I just keep crying while exiting the eco village. I start walking these 5 terrifying kilometers in this empty road, and there is a man loading his car with his children around him. I approach him, begging for a lift to the highway, but he just tells me to walk. I think of calling the police, but I don't know the number and I don't trust them anyway. Looking back though, this is what I should have done. I keep walking and walking, just trying to calm myself down. Sometimes there would be a house with a couple of people outside. Other times there was nobody and I was shitting my pants. Luckily, there was no sight of the red van, and I finally make it back to the highway, and now I am crying because of relief. I also notice that there's a bus stop, and that was lucky. The bus comes after an hour, and I spend my emergency money for a ticket, and I arrive safely to my destination. I did hitchhike very carefully one more time after this incident, but I haven't done it since then. I think I need some more time to feel comfortable on the road again. But I can't simply forget how beautiful hitchhiking can be. Well, most of the time anyway. For a little background, I grew up in the countryside of Mississippi. Ever since I was young, I've seen and heard strange things in the woods in my backyard. It's around the location where Hernando de Soto, the conquistador, explored. It's the old property of a plantation, and eventually a dairy farm that withered away with time. I have no mental illness, a good memory, and I was very successful in school and college. I'm the middle child of 2 other siblings, so I've always been the one that isn't involved and unnoticed. But anyway, here it goes. It was the year of 2009, and in the early spring. I normally have regular sleeping patterns, but randomly wake up at 3 a.m. sometimes. This morning, I woke up at 3 a.m. I was in bed and kind of restless to fall back to sleep. I noticed when it turned to 3:15 that something changed. I began to feel uneasy. My room seemed extremely still, and it was too quiet for comfort. And then, from the woods in my backyard, I started hearing an uproar. Since I live in the country, I know what bobcats, coyotes, deer, and other animals sound like making noises. I have even experienced a pack of coyotes howling before. But this was different. The screaming I heard started quiet and rose steadily from one spot in my woods. I jumped up and went to my window. I live on the second story, so I can see into the woods from my window. Soon, the screams became louder and louder, and it sounded like 1,000 people screaming in torment, like a choir of torture and pain. I looked in the distance on the local road and didn't see any lights or cars where someone could be doing this. I lifted my window up in my room and it was even louder. It lasted, from what I could tell, for 3 to 5 minutes, and then suddenly everything just stopped. Well, I jumped back into bed and tried to sleep. The next day, I spoke with my siblings and asked them if they had heard anything. My sister said that she was up at 3 a.m. and didn't fall asleep till 5, but didn't hear a sound. So, what do you think happened? Lately, I've been thinking about it constantly, and it still freaks me out to this day. I'm just glad that there's a community to share this experience with. So, I'm a 23-year-old Italian male living in a not-so-small town in southern Italy. Now, it's not the most secure town in the world. In fact, we have a long history of microcriminality connected to local mafia. But if you are smart, you can keep yourself out of trouble here. I need to explain my daily commute and context first, to make things better to understand. Basically, I live in the old part of town, as here, it's pretty common for every town to be built around its antique part. And after a 1980 earthquake destroyed a good part of it, it's very affordable to live here. And some parts are even beautiful and well kept. But others are not, so you find good families and great folk sharing spaces with some more pesky dudes. It doesn't help that the town's castle has been converted into a prison, but luckily it's only for minor offenders. So now, to the encounter itself. It just happened this January. I had just come back from uni, and it's just a 20-minute drive in the car. But with shitty public transport, it can take up to an hour and a half to get home. And as I like to study in the library till it closes at 6:30 p.m, I usually come back home at 8 p.m. or later. I get greeted by my dog, Maya. She's a beautiful sweetheart and innocent 1-year-old lab. And I take her for a walk around this part of the town and the castle, since it's her favourite spot to meet with other dogs. So, she was taking longer than usual to do her business, and I was freezing. I was wearing lighter than I should, plus it was snowing, which is super rare here, like super rare. In fact, this was the first time Maya saw snow, so she was really excited to be there. Because of this, I decided to walk back home and grab a jacket to better take delight of this occasion. And on my walk home, to make things shorter, I have to pass through this abandoned building under construction. It's pretty shitty. It just has the pillars and the floors done. But a lot of kids used it to play in and climb around in. Now, as I walked there, I see this guy standing there. His back was facing me, his head still like a rock, with his head facing upwards. He was looking up at the first floor of this abandoned building, had a dirty beanie hat, heavy winter jacket, and a tracksuit too wide for his build. And he was just standing there, still. At first, I froze in the spot too, but it wasn't anything too out of the ordinary just yet, since there are a lot of weird people around, and so I decided to just pass on. But the first red flag came when I was watching Maya. Her back fur was raised and she was looking dead at this guy. This was really weird because she never did this. As we try to walk by him, she keeps this behavior, and as we're walking, she emits this low-pitched growl, and this makes the man turn around. I had never seen this guy around here before, and if you're not a local, you really can't end up there if you didn't want to. And man, was this guy's face creepy. He had greasy hair and an undone 3-day beard. He extended his hand to Maya. "Hey doggy, how cute are you?" Stupidly, that calmed me down a bit. Maybe he was just a mentally ill person walking around or something. I mean, I know some of them around here, and they all pretty much look like him. But as he's trying to pet my dog, I hear something moving on the first floor's concrete. I thought it must have been a cat, but if it was, Maya would already be jumping around trying to catch him. So I looked up and I see this little girl, around 10 years old. And she had fear in her eyes, wide open, really desperate. She had a familiar face though, must have been one of the kids that play around this building or something. And she must have seen me walking my dog around here, because as soon as she recognized me, or my dog most likely, she caught my eyes and tried to whisper help with her lips. After this, I turned my head around, and the creep is watching me now. I would like to say that he had the usual creepy smile, but he didn't. He just had a really serious face now, looking dead in my eyes. At this point, I don't know what to do. I mean, I am a 6'2" guy and kind of imposing, but I have never fought anyone. And honestly, I'm a really peaceful guy. Well, in a fraction of a second, this guy looks up again and says,
"Calm down, sweetie. We need to get home. The food will be cold."
Yeah, sure. Totally believable 10 out of 10. Who are you and what are you doing here?" I ask him.
"Oh, I'm her uncle and I need to get her home to eat,"
he says with the most serious look on his face. I was thinking about how to answer that, to try and get her down and get her to safety. And being the sarcastic bitchy type in this situation, I said, "That's strange because actually I'm her uncle. And you don't add up." At this point, the little girl has the brilliance to lean off and say, "Hey uncle, can you help me home? Mummy will get worried." Now, this guy didn't seem threatening at the moment, just creepy. So I go under the building to take the little girl, and as I prepare to grab her, Maya, thank God, growls at him, and she then starts barking. She usually has a really feminine, high-pitched bark, but with this guy, it was really low-pitched and scared me even. So I turned around to see what was up, and I see this guy with a hand behind his back, reaching for something. I just think to myself, crap, I can't fight for shit hand to hand, and if this guy has a knife, this is going to end up badly. He stops his reaching motion as the bark is now continuous, and in the heat of the moment, the little girl leaned off and I grabbed her with one arm, the other one keeping Maya at bay as a deterrent, and while she was descending, I asked if she had a phone. She said that she didn't have it, and you could hear in her voice that she was on the brink of crying. So, as soon as she touched the ground, I unlocked my phone and gave it to her. Well, she took the phone and immediately legged it. I should have been glad, but my immediate thought was, if she did all this to steal my phone, I'll be really pissed. After all, it wouldn't have been totally unusual for this area. So, this girl is now gone, and I turn around and this dude has a fucking knife out. Not a pocket knife though. One of those big-ass kitchen knives you use to cut bakery bread. Well, upon seeing this, I decided to run away. But Maya decided that she was going to stand there and bark at him, and I couldn't manage to pull her away. She is almost 30 kilos, but I couldn't move her. So we were there stalling, and this guy starts swinging the fucking knife in the air. I want to run, but if I leave my dog, I know that she could end up really hurt. And even if I managed to pull her back, he could run after us. And so, there we were. Him swinging the knife with his empty eyes, my dog barking, and me shitting myself, not knowing what to do. And, to make things worse, my hands were freezing cold from not wearing gloves, and the grip on the leash that I had was really starting to hurt. Thinking back on this situation, the thing that still surprises me is the fact that I am absolutely sure that people around the block could hear this mess. But no one, not one single person, decided to take a look. Anyways, after what seemed like a long time, but was probably less than 2 minutes, I hear heavy footsteps from the street I came from. And then a lot of people show up, probably her dad and some of her relatives and friends, with a baseball bat. This is not going to end up well, I thought. As soon as the creep saw those men, he threw the knife in my direction. He had terrible aim, but still, I had to move not to get hit. And then he started to try and run at me, trying to go into the street in my direction. Well, I didn't even try to block him because I was still frozen by the knife being thrown at me. But Maya bit his leg, ripping off a piece of the tracksuit. But the dude didn't even care, and he just ran for his life with some of the girl's supposed relatives behind him. He eventually managed to get them off, but the girl's father came to me. I thought he was going to thank me, but instead he screamed at me. He asked me who I was while waving the bat around. I looked at the girl, telling him to calm down, but he only got more pissed. That is, until the girl ran up to him, telling him that I helped her, and gave my phone back. After that, he calmed down and told me that he was sorry. He told me thanks for helping his girl, and offered to grab me some coffee at his house. But after everything that had just happened, I politely refused and just went home. The next morning, police rang my doorbell to take my statement. Apparently, the guy had managed to get away. They showed me a book with a bunch of photo IDs and stuff, but nothing came out of it. It was likely that he wasn't even from nearby. You could kind of tell from his dialect and accent. And that was the end of it. I know I could have done things better, but I'm just glad that I could help that little girl. Honestly, I don't know where she would be today if I or someone else didn't show up.